Okay, just giving it 30 more seconds. I see a couple of people have already started joining us now. So welcome, everyone. A very, very warm welcome to all of you to our webinar today on the power of parents. We are very glad that you're able to join us today. It's also really nice to see many sort of familiar names in the box, people who've been with us in this journey of talking about power of parents, but also good to see some new names and people who are joining us for this conversation for the first time. A little bit of context for this session, and I'm just going to get us started because we do have a lot to cover today and more people will trickle in as we go along. But this session really is building off from a series that we have been running on power of parents, where we have been exploring deficit narratives about parents and parenting. Things like parents are not educated, so they're not able to teach their children, or that they don't have enough time and resources to support, or that they're just disengaged and don't have sort of energy to work with children in sort of their literacy development. And we've been looking at how these narratives really impact their sort of perceptions about their own selves, but also it changes the way the system sort of engages with them. So what we have learned as part of a lot of the learning sessions and discussions that we have done is that, yes, parental own confidence and mindset is one part of the problem, but it is a smaller part of the problem. The larger problem lies in the deficit narratives that stay in the wider ecosystem, in the beliefs of schools and communities and policymakers and funders on sort of how they view parents. And unless we change the perspectives of sort of these actors and how they engage with parents, doing any kind of change at a household level will be difficult to kind of execute in a sustainable way. So today, really what we're asking is, how do we center parental confidence in sort of system level change? I'm Priyanka, and I work with the Global Schools Forum as an Evidence Hub Manager. A quick introduction about GSF for those of you who are new here. Global Schools Forum is a collaborative community and innovation accelerator and a partnership builder for non-state organizations working to improve education at scale for underserved children in low and middle income countries. Currently, our network has 177 organizations that are working across 60 countries, impacting about 134 million children through 1.3 million school and school networks. Very quickly, jumping on the objectives for the day-to-day. So objectives are really threefold. One is to have a discussion on why we need to move beyond looking at parental confidence as just a personal mindset issue, but recognizing that it is shaped by how programs and policies and societal narratives and public discourse engages with parents. The second sort of objective is to showcase some examples of few system level initiatives on how they have been working towards integrating parental engagement and parental confidence building in large scale education strategies. And the third objective is to make call for actions to critical system partners like funders, like governments, like other implementers and actors that are working with communities on what they can do differently and how they can contribute to building parental confidence more positively and bringing that reform in sort of mainstream education system. Couple of quick housekeeping points. The webinar is being recorded, so we are going to send a link to the recording with you after the session with some high-level takeaways. Please continue to share any questions, thoughts, reflections that you're having as we are going along through the chat or the Q&A feature on Zoom. We also have a poll at the end of this session. It takes less than a minute, but really goes a long way for us in continuing to improve these sessions. I am now going to pass it to our moderator for the day. That's Lawrence. Welcome, Lawrence. He's the head of education program at EduSpots. A little bit of an introduction about EduSpots is it's a grassroots organized movement that is based in Ghana, and they really set up community led learning hubs that are run by volunteers. Currently they're running about 50 community hubs that are run by 400 volunteers that they also called as catalysts. And Lawrence really, his main work was to manage some of this work, but he has also been an educator and a teacher. So he has a ton of experience working with parents and communities himself, and has also run a program and been a part of a program called as Don't Stop Learning, where he worked tirelessly on embedding sort of parental engagement strategies and improving community ownership. So we're very excited to have you, Lawrence, lead this discussion for us. I'm now going to hand it over to you to introduce our speakers for the day and then to lead us through the panel discussion.
Thank you very much, Priyanka, and a warm greeting to all of those who have joined the session. Wherever you're joining from and the time of day you are joining from. It's a pleasure to moderate this session. And I hope that you are able to contribute and participate actively. This is a very important topic that has really informed what we do at EduSpot, and we continue to explore strategies to do this well. And so I'm also in this space to learn as much as everyone who has joined. And I want to acknowledge that when we talk of centering parental confidence and system level change, which is the theme that we are discussing today. And Priyanka, you have done justice by introducing some aspects of it. I hope and believe that it's, more about the wider conditions that shape whether parents feel valued and capable as partners in their children's learning. And I believe that our panel today bring a wealth of insights into how those conditions can be shifted. And so to quickly do the introduction of the panel, first we have Sash. She prefers to be called Sash. Yeah, so Sash is an award-winning strategic communications and social impact leader with over 2 decades of experience designing and executing behavior change, public awareness, and multi-stakeholder campaigns across India and the Global South. With a deep understanding of the intersection of communication, gender equity, and development, she has built and led some of India's most impactful campaigns in education, health, renewable energy, and digital inclusion. Sash currently serves as director and regional lead for Dalberg Media Asia, where she heads cross-country storytelling and movement building projects. She brings expertise in crafting narrative frameworks, managing creative and production teams, and also, leading co-creation with public and private sector partners. And interestingly, she is also the founder of Top Parent, and Top Parent is a free mobile-first EdTech platform, and it has over 1.7 million downloads, and that promotes early learning outcomes among low-income families. And previously, she's also served as founding and managing director of Sesame Workshop India, where she localized and scaled iconic Sesame Street brand to 9 Indian languages and raised over $25 million for impact-driven content across TV, radio, and community media. That's an impressive profile, Sash. And to move on now to the next panelist, who is Dr. Kwame Echampong, whom I've had the pleasure of meeting in person, although briefly. Doc is Professor of International Education and Development at the Open University in the UK. He began his academic career in Ghana at the University of Cape Coast in 1989, and then he went on to serve as the director of the Institute of Education from 2002 to 2004. He has particular interest in the political economy of education systems in low-income countries, and also he has his research aimed to offer alternative viewpoints on educational policy and practice based on critical perspectives and experiences of policymakers. And we can go on, but he's also been consulted widely by UNESCO, FCDO, Belgian Development Organization, and the World Bank. And finally, we have Richard. Rachel is the CEO of Dost Education, where she leads efforts to make every child school ready by equipping caregivers with simple, playful, and accessible tools rooted in responsive caregiving. Rachel is a leading expert in early childhood development, and she has designed and scaled programs on play-based learning, behavior change, and caregiver support, partnering with organizations like Top Parents. So we can see the connection here between Rachel and Sash, Save the Children, and the Ministry of Women and Child Development. Previously, she's also, spent a decade at Sesame Workshop, where she led winning early childhood multimedia and outreach initiatives across India and globally. And so, yeah, we have a very packed, panel full of insights, and they come across with a wealth of experience. And so, welcome to you all, and thank you for joining us today. And to start off the conversation, just as an opening reflection, and I can start here with Richa, and this will come to all of us. Was there a moment in your early education when something a teacher, school, or system did left a lasting impact on your confidence?
Thank you, Lawrence. Thank you for setting the context and for such wonderful introduction. I think we always carry back some memories from our school days or our early days for as far as we can remember. But one memory that stays with me of my middle school memory, when my English teacher was distributing test papers. We used to be distributed your marks, and the test paper was distributed in the classroom, and I didn't score very well. And she told me, Mrs. Mak, who I still remember, that, oh, I expected you to score, like, be amidst the top 5. And I wasn't I wasn't an interactive student. I wasn't the student who would raise her hand on every question. I was quite child. So it for that moment when she said in front of the class, I still have this feeling with me. I can still relive that feeling, that it just made me felt seen, because I didn't think that anybody thought anything of me. And she was just telling me, even though I scored miserably, she thought that I was one amongst the top scorer. And that was a great feeling, if the teacher was thinking of you and seeing you and recognizing you, and even if you were not really vocal in class. So I think that memory stays back with me. Just to be seen is really important.
Moving on now to Sash.
Same question. Thanks, Lawrence, for that great context setting, and to Priyanka as well. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think in the era that I've grown up in, my life really revolved around family. In the absence of screens, my world was really shaped by play, imagination, and the time we spent with, like, parents and grandparents. I think they were really my first teachers, and truth be told, I think lifelong teachers. So more than schools or formal education, and I've really had some truly outstanding teachers, I think it's really my family who nurtured my confidence and shaped my beliefs and values. And for me, confidence was not something that came out of textbooks. It was really something that that I absorbed at home, through trust, through love, through validation, and that constant validation that families provide. I think it is really, really an important reminder for all of us today, because the seeds of confidence, I feel, in the early years is really planted at home. So, yeah.
Interesting. I think I have a lot of connections there in terms of how family builds confidence. And I remember very well an uncle who doesn't live with us, coming home, took a newspaper, a gift to me, and said, "Read, let me hear you read." And after reading, he really applauded me. And I felt like, wow, if this man with his pedigree can give me this compliments, that's really, it means I'm doing something right. So thank you for sharing, Dr. Kwame.
Thank you very much. I think we all have we can remember one teacher or two who really left a lasting impression on us. But I want to single out one teacher in grade 1. Because the reason why I single out grade 1 is that grade 1 I was very young. I don't know how many of us remember our grade 1 teachers and the experience we had. And for me, it's that important because that's the early stages of education, of schooling. And my grade 1 teacher, Mr. Arthur, I can still picture him. I was very young, but he comes to mind because he exuded so much confidence in us as children. It was incredible. And I think that is the thing that reminds me of, and it wasn't what he taught, but what he made us feel. And happening at the very early stages of my schooling really made me feel an affinity to learning that was built on by other teachers. But I still remember Mr. Arthur, my grade 1 teacher.
Wow. So it's interesting to know, how those little actions can have ripple effects and continue to shape who we become, even in the long term as individuals. But then most importantly, for the purpose of our conversation today, we're looking at that kind of confidence as it sits with parents who play an integral role in the next generation and in children. And so zooming right in on the topic for today, centering parental confidence in system level change. There's been a lot of conversation around whether this should start from an individual level or should start beyond the individual level. And so coming now to all of us, and I'm happy for anyone to go first at this point. The question is that what makes parental confidence a system issue and not just an individual one? And while you're saying this, how would you define the system that's shaping parental confidence?
Yeah, I mean, I can start. Yeah. I think that's a parental confidence is one of the biggest factor, I think. And when we talk of parental confidence, I think we're always tempted to see that only as an individual trait. Whether a mother or a father believes he or she can support a child or teach a child irrespective of their background. But we can't ignore the norms around or the stereotypes or even the ecosystem that shapes that confidence or how that individual herself was raised. I think, for instance, I think caregiving is almost always seen as a mother's responsibility, while fathers are, I won't say invisible, but they actually take on the role of providers rather than nurturers. And there isn't an active involvement there. So many parents also feel that because they may not be literate, they have nothing to offer to the child's education. So confidence is undermined before it even begins. Their confidence is really undermined. This is why I think we at Dost Education define the system more broadly. It is about the ecosystem that surrounds a family, ecosystem that surrounds a child. It is that entire system, not just government policies in school. It's the Anganwadi worker who's the child's teacher in a classroom per se, or somebody who's visiting home, a mother-in-law who reinforces traditions, the father who may think that his role is only financial provider. And I think the neighbors who watch and judge, those two, each of these voices can either diminish or affirm the parental confidence. And I think it is important for us to sort of address each of those dimension of that ecosystem that the child is being raised and parents, how they are nurturing their children. So when we design, I think we don't just push content, we work actively against these stereotypes. We tell parents that your everyday talk, care, and play is education. We normalize fathers reading stories or father trying to give a child a breakfast or something, or maybe, play with the child for a little bit. We totally understand the realities of their life, but we want to normalize that. We want to reassure mothers that their lack of formal education does not make them not capable of providing education. I think that confidence comes from somebody telling them you can still do it. I think that's a collective narrative by social norms. I think it is not an individual mindset. That's what we want to kind of look at it through that lens. So the system level confidence building is addressing all of these different levels in our families.
Yeah.
I love the, social norms or gender norms perspective where you've come from. Doc, you want to say something?
Yes, I want to be a bit more provocative in my submission to this issue, because I think, and at system level, I mean, and particularly in Sub-Saharan Africa, if you look at a lot of initiatives that tries to improve quality of education in Africa, especially at the basic level, there's no denying the fact that parents are considered an important part. I think that system like that is just recognition. But I think the problem has been that the parents there's an assumption made about parents and their role. And often you hear about empowering parents. I think this idea that parents need to be empowered, I think, has been the problem. The problem we've had is then, therefore, that we have models and systems of empowering children, parenting, particularly in Africa, which is not in sync with African values and culture. So you have programs that say, okay, we're going to tell parents about the importance of education and children, what their role, and parents are gathered. And if you attend any of these parental engagement events, the parents are treated like children. They are taught, they are given information, they have no agency or voice. I think this is the problem. And this is repeated time and again. If you pick the latest intervention in many countries, if you like to look at it, you would see that often it's about how do we empower parents to support an initiative. And I think that has been totally misleading. And this is why we have not had the kind of impact we are having because of the assumptions that have been made about parents. And I'm particularly worried about in the context of Africa, because in Africa, we have a situation where the value system, our community value system is completely missing in the conceptualization of parental engagement. So even where you group parents, how you meet parents, we take away the cultural norms and values that really make parents empowered. If you go into our homes and our communities, parents have agency. It's not as if they need to be empowered with what, So I think this is where we have had the problem. And so we design programs to empower parents, and we keep repeating that. And parents are treated as if they have no contribution to make. Their values and their systems are not recognized. You talk to teachers and they say, oh, the parents are not interested in education, and they're sending their children to school. It's wrong. It's not correct, and therefore we need to educate the parents. I think this is something that has been repeated time and again. And I think this is why at the policy system level, parents have been diminished and their contributions are undervalued. Thank you.
Interesting. Yeah. So that idea of always looking at things from our perspective, especially those of us who are practitioners outside of communities, without without co-designing right from the onset or right from the start. Yeah. Sash, do you want to add something on this and then we move on?
Yeah, just a couple of things I think Richa and Dr. Kwame has already covered, but and I totally echo this, right? Because I think one of the things, when we did our research needs assessment study before we developed the app Top Parent, we interviewed over 550 families in India. And the one thing that really stuck with me is that the way they voiced about supporting their children's education or supporting their children's development at home was the fact that they did not feel capable, right? And the word they kept using was a Hindi word called saksham, which basically means that, hey, because I am not, I don't think I'm literate, I don't think I have the resources, I feel like I am not going to be able to support my child. And, interestingly, when we told them, but you are doing it pretty much every day in your life, I think one of the core insights was that the parent does not see play as education. And therefore, there is an undermining of also that. So it's not so much about empowering them. It's not so much about educating them. It's really about equipping them. And I think it's really providing, the permission, and so that there is confidence, right? So it's not like parents lack intent. They do not lack intent. They want their children to do better than them. But I think what really is that they feel like nobody has given them the permission to do it, because only teachers can teach, parents cannot teach. And that's like a predominant narrative that everybody lives with, and that narrative is repeated by schools, by systems, by communities, etc., and then becomes the broader narrative. So I think to really shift that narrative is very, very, very critical.
Interesting. I like where the conversation is going to. So we've looked at, in terms of, the parental confidence and the systems required. We've looked at the wider cultural and, the cultural norms within which parents are situated, constraining their efforts. Sash, you wrap that up, considering that their conscious awareness that even their daily actions and practices go a long way to emphasize or strengthen the fact that, you have what it takes to contribute to your children's education. Doc has also given us that perspective of the hierarchies that exist, when we are relating to parents and treating them as, should I say, objects, instead of, people who have agency, what it takes to contribute to the discourse and to give something. And so moving now back to you, Sash, talk to us about top parents. Tell us a bit about the model and then how you use the role of technology in embedding. I like that word, fans of knowledge. And of course, another interesting word, strength-based engagement at scale.
Sure. Okay. So I just want to start by saying we live in a really different world from the era that I grew up in, and today's children are digital natives. But one thing that I feel really hasn't changed is that families still play a central role in shaping how children learn, how children grow, how children can thrive. I think what is really exciting also about the age we live in is that we don't really have to see technology and family as, as two opposite spectrums and opposites. So Top Parent is really a solution where we've really tried to harness the transformative power of both, where we can bring the intimacy of family and the scale of technology to equip parents. So it doesn't begin with children, a solution, it really begins with parents. And we believe that every parent, regardless of literacy levels, income levels, or linguistic diversities, have a right. So the model is really a simple model, but we think it's really powerful. It's a free mobile first solution. It works on low-end phones. It's in local languages. And really what it does, it equips parents with practical resources, play-based worksheets, short videos, audio prompts, and pairs them with behavioral nudges through like WhatsApp and voice notes. And these small culturally resonant strategies help parents to say to themselves, I can do it, right? Like this is something that I can contribute to, and, slowly and surely kind of build that confidence. So till date, we've reached over 1.7 million families. And we've got fairly good results and impact data, et cetera, which I'm not going to delve into. But I think the reason why our engagement is strong is because I think users feel like the content feels familiar, it's accessible, it's respectful of the knowledge that they already bring, whether it's the stories or the songs or the problem solving that they are doing at home on a daily basis. So when we talk about technology at scale, it's really not just about reach, right? It's about recognition. It's about building dignity into design. And I think, people here will have kind of understand and resonate with it. So for us, Top Parent is really not just another EdTech app. We wanted to build a movement of belief because, again, I go back to my own story, because the most powerful learning we feel don't start in a classroom. It starts when a parent, once unsure, turns to their child and says, let's learn together. And we see that playing out every day. So I'll stop here, Lawrence. Thanks.
Yes, I know the audience might have, some contributions. Feel free to use the chat box and we'll pick that up. But then, just a follow-up question to you, Sash. I'm curious to know more about how you get, the content which you upload or install on your various platforms. What are the systems you put in place to, here we mentioned fans of knowledge, to get the parents to actively contribute to the content that you host on your platforms. How do you roll that out practically? Yeah.
So we actually created a lot of content along with the community of parents. So all our videos that are on the app are actually stories of change that the community brought to us and said, hey, I play like this with my child at home, you know. And so we said, did you know that if you ask your child to help you in a chore, for example, like sorting clothes or whatever, you know, you can also use this as an opportunity to teach them about patterns, about colors. And they're like, but we already do it. And we said, yeah, we want to hear your story about how you do it, right? And that's how the scripts were written. That's how, you know, we shot with real people. You know, we worked a lot with Dost Education, and maybe Richa would like to talk a little bit about it, where they were doing a lot of audio support, you know, with the community, and we collaborated to say, okay, how can we turn them into audiovisual content that parents can kind of engage with. So yeah, I mean, I think it is important to understand that, you know, when we talk about human-centered design, it's really not just about listening to the community, it's actually about co-creating with the community. And I think one of the strengths that Top Parent has is that we've co-created the content with the community. So it's really their voice, their agency, you know, and we listen and we keep our communities very up close and personal. You know, we're talking to them almost on a single basis. And even today, not a single thing in our app actually is changed without going back to the community and checking with them, does this work for you?
I think at EduSport, one thing we're also very particular about is representation. And you know, you mentioned that, right? Even how characters are represented in content and whether it will have any local relevance. Richa, coming to you, Dost, you're all working on the same tangents of tech, you know, and so talk to us about Dost and the human connection, you know, your approach, why you believe this combination is effective in building parental confidence at scale.
Yeah, thank you, Lawrence. I think I'm just going to build from where Sashwati left and echo some of the things that she's already mentioned. I think at Dost, also we believe that caregiving is education. Education doesn't begin after caregiving. It is the start of education. And, you know, the child starts learning from the cradle, and the learning is not confined to the classrooms. Many parents, though, in low resource communities don't feel as confident that they can contribute. But our approach is to actually help them see that they can turn the world around the child into their classroom. And how do we do that? We do that through simple daily phone cast nudges, 1-minute audios, messages delivered to them on the most basic phones. Access does not depend on, you know, the literacy level, smartphone, or the data. And each message is a bite-sized nudge on, you know, talk to your baby while you're feeding, or play with your child when you're outside and when you have 10 minutes, or maybe turn your household chore into that play, or spark curiosity when you're outside, you know, looking at a tree or a bird and so on. And parents begin to realize that what they already can do is a powerful way for child's development and for the child to learn. And I think it goes back to where we design these, keeping their realities in mind, respecting their realities, respecting the fact that parents are aspirational. And yes, they don't feel confident enough in their capability. So this is an effort to bridge that. And if we look at the data, like nationwide data, a mother often on a weekly basis spends about 11 hours on caregiving activity as compared to just 1.3 hours into child development activity. That's like, I'm talking on a broader level, not narrowing down to a urban or a rural setting. So we recognize that how can we bridge that gap and turn those caregiving activities also into child development activities when the child is really learning through it. And that's how exactly we don't separate child care from child development, help them to sort of bridge that gap. But confidence, you know, doesn't grow just by information, we believe. And the research and our research and constant research that we undertake has been the guide there to, you know, help us navigate and help us design solutions. So I think parents want to feel supported and recognized, and that's why we added the touch layer, which is peer learning through mothers meeting, fathers meeting once in a month. I think, and identifying these community champions or early adopters of the content and people who are modeling some of our talk, care, and play strategies, I think they become the champions of it. Now, these spaces, they normalize caregiving, bring fathers into the picture, and show families they're not alone in this journey where they're feeling a little bit underconfident and ill-equipped to provide education or contribute to a child's learning. The real strength of this model is really, how do you blend the technology that provides you the scale, provides you access to millions of families who are still not, who still do not have a smartphone at their homes, and the smartphone is just with the key provider of the family, which is not accessible on a, on a regular basis to the mother, but it really blends that access and scale through technology, but a human connection builds that trust, and affirmation comes from that peer support, that there are other people who are using this content, or the other people who are facing the same kind of challenges that we are facing. And that's what shifts parental role from feeling inadequate or seeing themselves as capable co-educators. I think that's the shift we are working towards through our tech tools and this low touch engagement peer learning platforms. I'll stop here if you have questions.
I think just making some reflections from what you were saying. I mean, you mentioned the boundaries to education, and that it cannot just be confined into the classroom, the corners of the classroom. But then we see that education even goes beyond into our various homes. And I love it when you talk about tech, and the parents finding themselves in a community of practice where they can actually, and so a lot more times we just think that handing over the device to a parent would necessarily mean building the confidence or even just having them watch the videos. But I love the fact that there is some sort of peer learning support systems where you can have some human interactions alongside working with the technology, and so that they can become very confident in using same. Dr. Champon has published a paper on power of parents. I don't know whether it's free to access, but maybe he can talk to us about that. And so, Doc, coming to you now on the study that you've conducted, what systems level design elements across schools, programs, or community structures most contributed in your study to building sustained parental confidence?
Thank you very much. And just to add that the study that was done by a team at the Open University, of which I was a part. And so it's a collective endeavor, and we were supported and funded by MC2H. So we're very grateful for that. We were looking at the power of parents and the issue about the cultural heritage and how it unlocks literacy. We know the issue of literacy has been quite central in development discourse around literacy improvement in low and middle income countries. So we were particularly interested in what is the role that parents can actually play, and often we assume that parents have a very limited role to play. So we wanted to explore the literacy that parents already possess. And often when we talk about literacy, we're talking about a different type of literacy. So our study, first of all, did a literature review to see what is out there. In terms of parental contribution to literacy development, we found very little. We think that when we think about literacy, our minds often tend to schools, textbooks, and formal lessons. But the question we asked in our study was, could the most profound literacy lessons begin long before a child, for example, steps into a classroom? And in fact, could the home environment, the local community, the cultural and inherited cultural traditions play a more significant role than we realize? And I think this is where we connected our study with the issues of our literacy, because the literacy focus is often at the school level and not at the parental or home level. So we felt that there was this untapped potential that exists within the community, within parents, that could spark children's interest in literacy and language. So one of the things we found was that there is a fragmentation between what parents, first of all, the parents themselves do a lot, and as has been said in the examples given, that they do actually a lot, but sometimes they're not very aware that these are actually important contributions to the child's literacy development. In the same vein, the schools do not recognize these funds of knowledge. These are things that the parents do as a contribution to developing literacy of children. So there isn't an opportunity for the school to look to the community, to parents as a resource in developing literacy competence among children. So I think this is a huge gap. And then often when you look at programs that try to engage parents, it's not from the point of view of what they can contribute to. So we talked about in our work the untapped potential of parents and the cultural heritage in literacy development. So the question we asked in our study is, why don't we see cultural richness reflected in schools? That is from the point of view of the parents, that only in formal education, we teaching children to read and write, that the school or the home has very little to contribute. What we found was actually that there's quite a lot of resource within parents that really contributes to the early stages of literacy development in children. If you look a lot about the literacy movement in trying to help children to read, it does not tap into the oral literacy, into some of the cultural literacy practices that parents are very strong at. It starts with the formal literacy at the basic level, and erases anything that happens before that. And if you erase that, then you raise the contribution of parents. And our study was actually centering this idea that in trying to improve literacy among children, actually the beginning is not in grade 1. The beginning is really at home, in the community. And that oral literacy and the folklores and the things that the community, the parents do, are the basic blocks that you need before you can then build strong literacy among children. So we consider parents and their cultural practice as crucial in the literacy acquisition of children. That's what the study said. But we also recognize that the implementation is not always easy, that parents often lack confidence to engage with formal education systems, partly due to what we've already said about limited education or ignorance of their own potentials. And they may not see themselves as teachers, if I can put it that way, or feel equipped to support their children in formal literacy. So incorporating what we argue, finally, if I can add this, what we argue is if we can incorporate the culturally familiar activities like drumming, singing, and other things that parents do to support their children's literacy development, then we are building the strong foundation for which schools can link up with what parents do to really ensure that when children come into the classroom, they are already, the teachers recognize them as coming with something. Do not treat them in deficit, but can help them to recognize, use what they bring to recognize sounds, patterns, memory, improve memory, develop language skills, etc., etc. So this was the focus of our study. There's a lot more I can say, but I think I'll stop here for others to contribute. Thank you.
Interesting. I mean, it's interesting, and taking you on your point of implementation is not always easy, which is a fact, And here we're talking about systems level change, and so I mean, this is just a simple question to all of us, and then we can continue just as a follow-up. But in that sense, should we just look at influence or the confidence of the parents at the local level, or should we look at them like in the of school governance structures and so on and so forth? Is it right for us to say that in looking at the system level change, we should just look locally? Where should the focus be?
I mean, I don't think we can just look at locally, right? I mean, if you're looking at system level change, it needs to actually be embedded as part of the system, right? And that can happen at multiple levels, or that has to happen at multiple levels for it to be a sustainable, intergenerational, long-term change. So I think it needs to be more than at just local levels.
And I would agree. I think it's not just the local level. It's much more than that. And I think, but also I think we need to really think differently at the way in which at policy, both global policy, but also local policy, the intersection of global. Because you can have global policy which is driven by a deficit idea of parental engagement, and which not is not in tandem with what the local policies or national policies. And often the global policy drives the national policy in many cases. So that's why I like what what you're doing, because you are surfacing the really important, the power and the potential of these parents, and becoming a resource within at the national level, and speaking back to global level. So I think when we talk about global, I mean, whose global are we talking about? We are part of the global economy. So I think we need to really elevate, as Sas and Richie have been talking about, to elevate that, so that there is no fragmentation. There is alignment between the global understanding of parental contribution and the national or local level. I think this is where we often find that we are not working in tandem.
Great. I know that some good questions will follow, but then we're trying to wrap up at this point. And coming to you, Richard, let's now look at, now we've talked about what's working, but what still needs to change at the system level? You know, we've just, reflected on whether this should happen at the local level or the global level, but what really needs to change at the system level to truly embed parental confidence in the way education is designed and delivered? And starting with you, Richard, and then I'll take the rest.
Yeah, thank you. I think parents and caregivers are core to education, and they are not peripheral. So first thing first, that their home is where, the foundation of education is laid and the education truly begins. I think that's something that we have to understand. And policies often focus on schools and teachers, but parents are seen as beneficiaries. I've often heard in policies, who's the key beneficiary of this? Their children, there are parents, but they are more like partners. We have to work with them. We have to work with their reality, their context. So if governments and funders explicitly invest in parent sort of engagement on how we approach getting the best global practices, but tailoring them to their context, something that makes most meaning to parents in their relevant context, is really, really important. It's about having that workforce that works with parents. How's their training needs to be done? How can they be better partners to parents? How can they be better coach to parents, or embedding parent support into the entire educational reform setting? I mean, we put policies, we also have a national education policy that talks about parental engagement, but how do we really put that policy into practice, and what are the different steps that we need to take it to really make it most meaningful for parents in different contexts? So that systemic shift has to come. It's about moving from parents need to be helped, but parents are the co-educators. I think that's the recognition, backed by funding and design, that will make parental confidence just by default and not by exception. And we also need to really see, how do we measure parental outcomes like that? I mean, just moving beyond, did parent participate? Did parent listen? I think to asking if parents feel more capable, are they really repeating some of the strategies that are imparted to them? And how are they engaging with the child differently? What is that, how are they spending, even if they were spending half an hour or 30 minutes each day, how are they spending it now? I mean, so at those, we kind of mix the data and stories. I think you have to listen how they are listening. You have to see behavior adoption. You have to see the confidence scores. But also parent voices are really important. I think we need to bring more and more parent voices in from different contexts. I think that's where it's about learning with families and designing, like Sash, a more human-centered, with more human-centered approach. Make them participants. Bring the best policies from global, and like Dr. Kwame said, somehow we need to bridge that. We need to really meet the parents where they are with their own realities, I think.
Dash. Thank you, Richard.
I think Richa more or less said whatever I wanted to say, but yeah, I just want to add a couple of things. I think for decades we have really invested in classrooms and content and infrastructure, right, without really thinking about the fact that every parent is a teacher and every home can actually become a classroom, right? And I really feel that unless we get to that point, because um, parental engagement in system is always treated as an add-on, even in the national education policy in India, which by the way took 35 years to even recognize early childhood education. Forget about anything else. And then kind of, the parent is really this add-on, right? Oh, we should do parent-teacher meetings. We should have school management committees where parents are participating. But, they're not treated as a core pillar of education reform. And I think that really needs to change at every level. And there needs to be serious investment into thinking that, instead of, and I'm not saying instead of, that's a bad word to use in the space, but, while we also build capacity of thousands of teachers, we also need to build capacities of thousands of parents, right? And that's not happening because scaling parental confidence is not a program, right? I mean, it's a movement. It needs to be recognized as a movement. I feel like because I like movements, and movements, when they start, I feel are kind of unstoppable, right? So it's great that we are actually having a webinar on this, because I think it's such an important topic and not a lot of people actually talk about it. So, and yeah, I think when parents stop being bystanders and start being recognized as partners, that's when we'll see the real change happen.
Great. Look,
Yeah.
to
Yeah,
add
I
to your point, maybe you can also talk about if we want to scale parental confidence systematically, what's one policy, funding, or program decision that must change now? Yeah.
Okay, it's a big one. I think that there are many things that we need to pay. I think it's the investment. What do we the nature of investment in parental engagement? It's not there. It is very tokenistic. It's a smattering of funding to help get the parents on board. That is wrong. And I think this is why I said at the beginning that you have to place the parent at the same level. I think the problem, if you think about what rich people do, or you and I do, middle class, or whatever you want to call yourself, what do you do with your children? You sit with them and teach them how to. Yeah, sometimes we do that, but we create an enabling environment that is rich in certain qualities that helps our children when they get to school. We create that through play. We do play. That play gives them confidence. But when we come to parents who are, illiterate or something, we tend to think they don't have an equivalent of what we do with what we do. And so our investment is wrong. We just think that let us make them like us, and you just need a little resource. I think so. The funding of parental engagement should be really upped up. If we're going to tackle, if I said we were looking at literacy, if we're really going to tackle the problem, equally, we have to pay attention to some of what Ricky and Sas are saying, that we do need the investment to go there. It is not on the scale as, if you look at the funding stream, if you look at any program, the parental engagement bit is very little. And it says something about what we believe parents can do. And I think as a policy level, I think that's where we have gone wrong. And we need to get governments, funders, global leaders to change that mindset and to say that if we want to tackle this one, after all, the children spend the most time with their parents. They are the best educators, as has been said. And we need to really focus the funding there and help the parents build their confidence, get the resources there, make them as allies to this whole movement. I think that's where we need to focus attention.
Fantastic. So I think at this point, we can just move right into our chats and pick a couple of questions from our audience. And the first question we have is, in challenging circumstances like IDP settings, I suppose IDP means internally displaced people or something. Okay. To what extent can parents with EdTech even substitutes for school learning? Sash, do you want to take this?
Sure. I mean, I think to a great extent, right? Because this is something we've also seen playing out, and Sesame actually used to run projects in humanitarian settings, both in Bangladesh and in Jordan, where in humanitarian camps, education technology played a key role with support from parents to actually make sure that kids were continuing to learn. So, yeah, because access to schools are very difficult, but access to tech today is not that difficult. So with the right kind of education solution available, I think parents actually are the teachers in many, many ways.
Right. It brings us back to that idea of human-centered design and knowing where the tech is going to work, what context is going to work, and what, adaptations can be made from that. And also coming back to you, Richa, the same question, what are some of the persistent old as time challenges of working in this space, and what are some of the new ones?
I think there are multiple challenges, especially working in India in different states through different contexts, being absolutely contextual while you're designing for those solutions. It's not a one size fits all approach that can work with building parental confidence or supporting parents with any of these solutions. I think being contextual and working with them is it's a must do and a need to do kind of a solution. So understanding context is definitely a thing. Phones, like Sash said, is ubiquitous, so we can definitely use phones as really that access point, where parents are getting access to it. And I think going in with a strength-based approach of what parents can rather than looking at what they cannot, rather than really just focusing on identifying the deficit, I think we need to really go in with that strength-based approach. And really working with the realities of the parents. I think then we can design solutions that speak more to them and make it more meaningful for them. So, for example, if we are working in a state where we know predominantly women are are doing these household chores, or maybe are on fields at a certain in a certain span of time, then how do we design solutions that talk to them when they are available with the child, or what are the caregiving practices? And sometimes really weaving that context and cultural practices, I think, in is really important. I think, just like Dr. Kwame said, how can we use what already exists in the ecosystem to actually build your solutions for them? And that's how we are looking at, how do we look at early childhood oral language development from a household level? If we can use the cultural folklore or the stories or the lullabies that perhaps are being sung to children from ages, and those actually are really relayed back to them and packaged in a way that makes most meaning and bridges the gap between what they are doing and education. The idea is to help them understand that what they are doing and what the practices have they've been following can actually lead to a child learning new words, the child gaining vocabulary, the child learning to show improved indicators on oral language development. Some just doing a chore and telling a story can actually lead to a child learning language. I think those are some of the things that we always kind of keep in mind, especially when we see number of challenges. Displacement, like you said, is a big challenge. Abject poverty is a big challenge. Gender stereotyping, caregiving role stereotyping is a huge challenge. So how do we sort of challenge those and work around those? That's the idea, I think.
I mean, you just mentioned, and Priyanka, I know I'm on time, but probably let me ask this final question, and then I can summarize everything, and then we are off. But I mean, you just mentioned the socioeconomic status, and the conditions that might necessarily that may be used as a critique for centering parental confidence and system level change. And so some arguments could be that parents are already overstretched and burdened. And another way of looking at this could be a critique that, we need more evidence-based solutions. And so what ideas parents might have, Doc, maybe in terms of literacies, might not be evidence aligned. Doc, how do we, as a way of wrapping up for us, unless anyone wants to chip in here, but how do we ensure that in advocating for this kind of this level of inclusion, we demonstrate that their insights, their funds of knowledge really align with evidence-based practices?
Yes, I think some of what Sash and Richie, what they're already doing, I think the work they are doing demonstrates that there's quite a lot that, and they put it on platforms you can see. So I think we do need to raise the profile of such brilliant work and bring that to the attention of policymakers and planners, because unless we have something to show, to give, to present, I think we will be just saying things that are obvious to us, but not probably to the policymakers. So we need to build a resource. We need to build the networks. We need to create. This is why the Power of Parents, this network is very important, to show that it's not only happening in India or China or somewhere in Ghana, but this is collectively we are demonstrating that parents have a lot to contribute. Thank you.
Fantastic. Final words. I'm wrapping up at this point. Final words in a sentence.
I don't know. Let's create the movement, I guess.
Yeah, we need a movement.
Yes, let's create a movement.
Yeah, and my final word, I just hope this is the beginning of a movement. Just as Sasha said, let's really make this a movement that changes what we see out there. Thank you.
Let's keep the conversation going.
Keep on. Please go ahead.
I'm saying that let's keep the conversation going around parental engagement. We are going to lead to it turning into a movement, and then maybe have more resources being put in and poured into it.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Okay, so thank you very much. When I saw Priyanka, I knew that at this point, there's nothing I can say to convince her that my time is up in facilitating this wonderful conversation and also meeting you all. Thanks to our audience for your questions and also for contributing. And I think some key takeaways for us in this session will be for us to continue to see parents as partners and be deliberate in investing in them. And then also we need to look at how we measure their contributions and voices. And it ties back to the idea of giving policymakers evidence that this works, in this new movement. And also continue to build the capacity of parents, seeing this not as a program, but as a movement. And finally, I think not seeing this as tokenistic or superficial. So thank you very much. And I hope to have another opportunity to moderate a session. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. If the audience can just stay back for a couple of seconds to just take the poll. If you've already dropped off, I'm going to email it to you. But thank you to our panelists and to Lawrence for leading us through such a thoughtful conversation and asking the tough questions. I'll leave the poll open for a little while. And once you've taken it, please feel free to leave. I've also sent the link to the WhatsApp chat in case you're interested. We'd love to have you join the community. And if you'd like to continue to have this conversation, connect with me or connect with any of the speakers. And we look forward to staying in touch with you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Again, just the poll is on for a little bit more. But if you've taken it, please feel free to drop off and have a great rest of the day. Thanks. Thanks, Lawrence.